Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Healing Art After Hours. I'm Shauna Robeson with Creating Space Coastal, and in this video I'm going to share some of my favorite hacks and tools for drawing, doodling, Zentangle inspired art, tangling, whatever you want to call it. And then also there's a part 2 where I actually do a trace and some doodling for a butterfly. So please check out part 2 if you want to see what I do next. Let's get started. And the first thing that I just wanted to show you guys is these are some that I have done in the past, but this is using stencils. So if you, and the stencil can be either part of the string or it can be the frame of whatever your art is. So here's some examples. So this was a butterfly, let me see, you can't see, a butterfly stencil. And that's how I created this. And then I actually did a little fussy cut it out and glued it on to make a card. But all the designs inside, I did the doodle designs inside. So just using the stencil as your guide, here's another one where I used the mermaid stencil. And then I drew that out with some doodles and then did some coloring. And the last one that I had, still as an example, is this little starfish. So even something as simple as a starfish, like I said, I don't have a very steady hand. And so one thing you can do is draw something out in pencil first if you feel like your hand isn't real steady and you do want to freehand it, but you feel like your hand isn't steady, you can pencil it in first and then follow it, draw over the pencil. So that's all one way you can do it. And you can do that with a stencil as well. You can do pencil with a stencil and then hand draw it if you want that hand drawn look, if you want to say, I actually, drew it out. But really that's just to get me started. And there was a lot that I did to it that was, freehand. So just because you're using a tool doesn't mean that you're not creating it. I don't think you have to, I don't think you have to go, oh, this was, give credit to a stencil, but I mean, unless somebody asks you, obviously. But so some other ways that you can create with, well, actually, let me get to all the stencil ideas. So you can also, they create many different, bring this up a little bit, many different shape stencils or templates that are handy with all different shapes. So let's say you want to do even some of the patterns inside, some of the doodle patterns, and you wanted a little bit more precision. I know, for example, actually, let me show you an example of when I used a circle template because I just felt like I really wanted it to be uniform, and I knew that that was impossible for me. So I should have had this one handy, but it turned out, it turned out really cool, and I never would have been able to create the look. So it depends on what your look you're going for, and I try to most of the time let go of the need for that, perfect precision. But if you're doing a design like a geometrical design, it's nice to have, to use those tools. There's no way I would have been able to create this pattern if I didn't use a straight edge and I didn't use a circle. And it's still not exactly perfect because, where I put the circle was eyeballing it, but it's a lot more precise than I would ever be able to make freehand. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. Let's see, here's some other little examples of these templates. Now we're going to be doing more precision when we get into the mandala. Also, I'm going to show you the different ways that you can do it, from just very freehand to using precision. But that one takes some precision because you're repeating a pattern around the circle. So it requires a little bit more consistency, or at least an attempt at consistency. And there's you know, fully using tools, or there's fully freehand, but I'll show you those. Now, these are things you might have remember from your days of school and math, so don't get freaked out by them, but they can also help you with circles and whatnot. We'll be using these for when we work on the mandalas. And some of these are for measuring if you want certain sizes of something. Most of the time, like when I'm doing the doodle stuff, I don't really worry about that. Now, I did want to show you guys the French curve, because for a long time I was like, what the heck does this? I mean, I thought I want everything that can draw, and I didn't really understand how to use these. So if you happen to have this in your toolbox, you know, great. And maybe you have it, you're like me and you just get everything and then you figure out how to use it later. But there's fun things that you can do with the French curve. And one way to use it is basically there's several different variations of curves. Now, this isn't to measure anything. It was really created, actually, what I heard was that it was created originally for designing clothing. So things that have a lot of round shapes to them, but they do use it in drafting, like, you know, landscaping or things, anything that has curves. But these are just 3 different sizes. And so one of the things that you can do is if you have an idea and you want a curve in it, you can put a point where you want to start the curve. And then anywhere on the page where I want to end the curve. And then if I have an idea of how much of an arc I want, I can go in and I can connect the dots. Maybe I wanted to start off a little straight and then curve, or maybe I want it just a soft curve, or maybe I want it to be really, you know, I can decide based on the curves that these have, what kind of curve I want from that point to that point. And then I can, you know, this one's too small to really connect those 2 dots. This one I can. So then I can just connect those dots and get a nice steady curve. I would have a hard time being able to create that perfect or that precise of a curve. So it can help you with doing that. Then I can even go, if I want to go the other direction, maybe I want to make an S curve, I can, you know, continue it around. Kind of like we talked about last time, where you can do points and then you just go from one point to one point. So this just gets you from one point to one point. And then, you know, if you're going to do another line and you use this one, then you can, you know, bring it however far you want. If you want it to be parallel, you know, you can create more parallel line if you follow that. So anyways, that's one way you can use those curves as well. And then
Shauna, what are those tools called, the curved ones?
It's called a French curve.
And can you buy it on Amazon?
Yeah, you can get them on Amazon, or you can get them at Michael's or any crafting, any store that has like a drawing section. You can usually find a package.
Oh.
I got a package of them with a bunch of other different stencils, and I'm so happy you talked about that because I had no idea what to do with them.
I know, for a long time I didn't either, because it came with a bunch of stuff and it's like, what is that? And this one's really big. I mean, I can draw along the whole, you know, I can draw along the whole page. So yeah, and so here's an example of one thing you can do that's kind of fun. Let's say you want to make, like, there's this little wave shape. So I can even make little curlicues, you know, I can use that if I want to create, you know, a single one. But you can also just like move it a little bit and keep repeating the same thing and create kind of a cool wave. So, you know, you can get just, if you want something that's repetitive, this is great for, like, you know, if you're trying to create, like, you know, hair, precision hair. And then if I go the opposite way, I just flip it over, then I can do reverse. I can even create fun little. I can create like a fun little heart design. So you can have fun, I mean, with whatever the shapes are, and no matter what it is, I could scoot it over and do that like repeatedly and get these fun little echo lines. So you can have a lot of fun with some of those templates. Now, the other thing that some people use, knock everything up, is called a flex ruler. So let's say you have a specific, say there's not an angle that you really like, but you know what you want it to be. And you want a specific thing. Let's say I'm going from point, from here to here, and I want it to be, consistent. Maybe I'm have a particular project that I want it consistent. I can basically create my curve. Now it is flexible, so like if you don't hold it still, it's gonna, it can kind of move on you. So you kind of have to hold it. I don't know if there's a special way to do it, but so you can get, if you want to have it to be, the same going both different directions. So that's one way you can kind of create your own shape that you want. And this one you can make, a circle, you can make, I don't know if you can make it heart, you can create all sorts of fun shapes with it. So that's called a flexible ruler, I think. And it even has measurements on it. So the other thing that I just wanted to share is if you're trying to go from one size to another, one thing you can do, they actually sell these proportion scales. So you can go, okay, it's the original picture, like say I'm drawing from a picture. Now this is more for precision drawing again, but if I'm trying to make this house and I want to make it on a bigger scale, then you would decide how much you want to either make it large or, the percentage of the original size. So there's this little, like if I want to make it 6 times bigger than it is, this will show me how to find that size. So this is the size of the original. I can't even remember how to use this, honestly. I'm like, I have used this before, but it actually has the instructions on here. To find the new proportional size, line up both the present dimensions on the linear and outer scale, one above the other. The new dimensions will line up automatically in the same relative position. I don't even know what that means. But anyway, so this is one. This is one option, is that you can get one of these. Another option is there's a kit called Accuracy. So if you're really into, doing realism and you want to go from a picture, you can basically, this is how you measure, like this is the size of the wall of the house, for example, and then I want to make it so many times bigger. Now this comes out, so I can adjust it to, I can adjust this into different holes and make the angle, bigger or smaller. And I mean, there's a limit. So let's say if it's this big over here, and then on my project, I want it to be this big. So if I'm trying to make consistency, it helps me with that. Another thing that a lot of people do, they will use a projector. So they might have the photo and then it projects onto a canvas or whatever, which I don't have. But a lot of, artists, real artists use those kinds of tools to be so that they can get that accuracy. It's also nice, like, for example, if you're doing a face from a photo and you want to say, okay, I want the eyes to be this big, and then you can get an idea of eyes, because it's kind of hard to know. It's like, I know the eyes are, that the eyes can help you with knowing how big the face is. So some of those precision things this can help with. And this is, like I said, this is in a kit called let's see, accuracy. Oh, accuracy, but it's spelled ACCURASEE, accuracy. So that's kind of a fun tool. And then the last thing I want to show you, I think that was the last thing, but there's this one other thing. And actually, that's not the last thing. I'm going to go to tracing, but I did want to show you, this is an eraser guide. So it can help if you want to create white space. So if I have a drawing and then I want to remove, let's say I want, maybe there's hair strands or, you know, whatever shape you're trying to get white in there, you can use an eraser, a small eraser. I have this electric eraser that is another hack, and it rotates the eraser and you can sharpen it with sandpaper so you can get a nice fine tip. And then with this small thing, I can just use that little guide and then it'll keep me from erasing anything other than what's showing in the window. And I can create a nice clear white line. So that's one way to get some precision erasing for white space, for like hairlines or whatever. So those are two little hacks. And this one is made by Sakura electric eraser. So that's handy. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is tracing. There are several ways that you can trace. And probably many of you are aware of using a light tracer. So this basically is a light box and it glows. Now, this is a bulky one because it's a million years old, but they have really nice streamlined ones nowadays. They're LEDs and they're awesome. They're some of them are USB, and but basically this lights up behind. I'm not going to plug it in because I'm not going to demonstrate it because that's pretty self-explanatory. It just shines through your paper and you can see whatever pattern it is you want to trace. So you just put the paper over the top of whatever you're going to trace on. Now, this is difficult if you're using thicker paper. So if you're, for example, doing watercolor, that you're probably not going to get that. It's probably not going to show through. So you need to have paper that's thin enough that it's going to show through the light. Now, if you don't have a light box, you can also use a window during the day and just, tape it up just to get your outline. Now, the other thing that's pretty self-explanatory, this is some antique, because I don't really use it too often. This is Erase Ease Bond. So this is erasable carbon paper, and it basically has the carbon material on one side, and then you just put whatever you want to trace over the top of it and then go all around the outline, and it'll trace it onto the page that you put underneath it. So for example, if I had, let me just get an example. So this is the page that I want to draw on. Now, obviously, it's only, I don't know how big this paper comes, but you probably could just move it around if you want to have a bigger project. But let's say I really wanted to follow this pattern. I could just use I could even use probably a toothpick if I don't want to draw on the original. And I can just basically follow, oops. Maybe a toothpick's not the right thing. I was going to say a tool. If you don't want, I don't want to draw on this particular thing. Otherwise, you can just use a pencil. But I'm going to use I can find it. I was going to use my, somewhere I have a little embossing tool, but I'll just use this orange stick. So I can just follow that. You just need to create some pressure. And the nice thing about this is you don't have to trace anything you don't want. Let's say I don't want these inner lines, I just want the outer lines, then I can leave those off, whatever I'm tracing. So you can kind of make any changes that you want. And then it traces I don't know if you guys can see, it's very light, but it traces the pattern on there. This is blue, which isn't what I would want on any project. But okay, now I'm going to show you how you can do it with just whatever you probably already have in your stash.
Shauna, did they use, I mean, I remember using something like that when I was little, like when I took a typewriting class,
Yeah,
like carbon paper or something.
yeah, exactly.
Same
That's
concept.
exactly what it is. Because when you wanted to make a copy of a page, you would put that in the typewriter, and then it would type the page plus the copy. So
Yeah, that's what I remember.
and then they
Okay.
created carbon-free copies, and you didn't need that carbon piece anymore. But that's exactly what that is. This is actually this was from my ex-husband's family farm, the Century Farm, that was from the 1800s. So I don't know how old. This bond paper is literally antique. I've never used it. It just was stuff that was there. I'm like, oh, I could find a use for this. So I took it, but I don't use it too often for tracing. I don't do a lot of tracing personally, because I just let it, I just try to do it myself, and for the most part. I have used the light box, for example, when I've worked on drawing a face and I wanted to really get the eyes where they were supposed to be. Like, I wanted to get the facial features exactly where they were, and I just really didn't have the skill to be able to do that. And so I used the light box to just kind of place the eye, the main features, and then I did all of the fill in myself. So, but it did help me get those features in the right spot, because just moving the eyes or moving the nose up or down, I mean, that can change the whole look of a person. So it does make a difference. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me for this episode of Healing Art After Hours. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, or share if you find this content helpful. Thank you so much, and as always, happy creating!